You wiped off the name with your thumbprint. Bolens in script, chip green and white QT numbers. Ghosted in the paintwork, a little lost hero in the yard light. Bring it home to the gravel and the porch like glow. Hasn't moved in years, but you still believe there's a heartbeat under steel and snow. Bring it home, let the silence tell you where it's been. Turn the key so gentle, hold your breath and listen. Will it ever turn again?
First thing I wanted to do was change the oil. To help, I purchased this oil extractor on Amazon for less than $100. Now, this is not necessary to change the oil, but I wanted to give it a go, so let's try it out. This worked incredibly well. It was extremely easy. Now time to add oil back in. Under the hood is a cheat sheet and it tells us that we need SAE 30 motor oil. So that's what we'll add today. And we will fill it to what the manual says, which is 1.9 liters. Wait, this service manual says 1.42 liters. Let's just split the difference. I also need to add some fuel. I smelled the old gas and it didn't smell bad, so we'll keep it in there. There wasn't much in there anyway. I'll also change the spark plugs. Now the manual calls for Champion RBL 15Y spark plugs, which I could not find. But a quick search on Google gives us the replacements. So on Amazon, I bought the Autolite 25s for no particular reason. With these basic things done, let's see if it'll start. Nothing. Okay, let's give it a little extra and spray some starting fluid and give it another go. Still nothing. Okay, well, let's tear it down a little and get to the carburetor. Maybe that needs cleaned and rebuilt. Now that we have it at the workbench, let's break this down even further. I'm going to need some new gaskets. Here's the choke. And then the throttle. It's cool to see how different parts work. It helps to, wait, if it was turning over and it wouldn't start with starting fluid, maybe it's an ignition issue. Let's put a pause on rebuilding the carb. We have to wait for gaskets anyway. Let's switch gears. I'm going to pull out the spark plug I just installed and we're going to check for spark. Okay, not getting anything. Let's break this up into sections. Let's see if the battery is sending power to the ignition coil. For that, I will hook up a lead to the negative on the battery, and then one to the wire that attaches to the positive terminal of the ignition coil, and see if we're getting 12 volts. Wow, nothing. You know what would be nice? If you actually turn the machine on. There you go. Okay, now I can see I'm getting 12 volts, so this section is good. Well, if it's not this section, maybe it's the ignition coil then. With it back at the workbench, let's test the primary windings, and we're looking for anything under 5 ohms. Okay, good there. Let's move on to the secondary resistance. And that seems to be in an acceptable range also. Well, if it's not the ignition coil, maybe it's the ignition condenser. And these are cheap, so I just purchased a new one. And while I'm installing it, I'll also make sure it's attached to the negative terminal on the ignition coil. The previous one was attached to the positive terminal. Moving down the line, we have the breaker points. Let's give those a check. And you can see how these work. As the engine turns, a small bump on the cam pushes the points open. When the bump passes, a spring pulls them closed again. Okay, before we go any further, I should clean up real quick. Much better. Also, you can see I removed the points, so let's check them back out at the workbench. They are a bit dirty, so we'll need to clean the contacts. To do this, I'm going to take 1200 grit sandpaper and fold it in half, and then place these between the two contacts and let the points close, and then slide out the sandpaper. And I'll do this a few times to be thorough. Afterwards, I'm going to spray some brake cleaner to remove any grit and then wipe them all down. You will probably notice these are not the same points. The other ones did not end up working, so I had to order a new set, but here they are installed along with a new gasket for the cover. Now the manual calls that these breaker points be gapped at 20 thousandths of an inch, so we will use a feeler gauge to help us out. Tried to get a close-up so you can see this. So you loosen this screw and using your feeler gauge, you let the contacts close until there is a little bit of drag on the feeler gauge, and then you tighten the screw back down. I turned my exposure down, but it's hard to see. But as we try to start the engine, there is a spark. So we can put the cover back on and get back to the carburetor. This doesn't look too bad, no foreign material in the bowl, everything seems clean. So I'll just spray everything down with some carb cleaner since it's all taken apart and make sure no hole is plugged. Well, I can't get that main jet out, so I'm just going to leave that. Now the flat surfaces that connect to each other are pretty gummed up from old gaskets, so let's get some sandpaper and make these flat and clean. Okay, gaskets are arriving, so let's put this back together. Now the bowl has a gasket and then this baffle. We will also add this retaining screw gasket as well, and then torque the bowl retaining screw to 50 inch-pounds. Now we're going to connect the inlet elbow, which has a gasket. That took me a few tries to get the right orientation, but I got it eventually. Now, the only gasket that we need for the carburetor is the one that goes in between it and the manifold, which is now delayed. You know what, let's just scan this part, trace out the image, use this laser cutter to make our own gasket out of some gasket material. There we go. Now we can put the carburetor back on the engine. There's also a gasket in between the inlet elbow and this base plate that holds the element. Ordered a new air element as well. And now, for the moment of truth. Will it start? Yes, it started. Well, that's a lot of white smoke. Let's try that again. What in the world? Why is it smoking so bad? Also, my neighbor is mowing his lawn, which seems like the cherry on top. What seems to be happening is that after the engine warms up, it just starts raising the RPMs incredibly high and barreling out white smoke. Now, while I was diagnosing this problem, it just went away. So we're just going to ignore that problem unless it comes back. Well, that'll end this video. Thanks for watching.
You backed it down slow from the trailer, rust on the rails, dust in your hair, faded old decals, stories half hidden like a postcard left under a chair. You wiped off the name with your thumbprint, Bolens in script, chip green and white QT numbers, ghosted in the paintwork, a little lost hero in the yard light. Like glow hasn't moved in years, but you still believe there's a heartbeat under steel and snow. Bring it home, let the silence tell you where it's been. Turn the key so gentle, hold your breath and listen. Will it ever turn again? Lift up the hood like a curtain, cables like veins, brittle and thin, rid off the stamping on the side of the engine, murmured letters rolling off your grin. Oh, oil dark as coffee in the filter, mouse nest tucked where the fan should spin, belts gone slack, but the flywheel's waiting for your head. There's a heartbeat under steel and snow. Bring it on, bring it on. Let the silence tell you where it's been. Turn the key so gentle, hold your breath and listen. Will it ever turn again? You talk to it low like an old friend. Don't seize up now, just give me one bend. Battery clipped, little spark in the dark. Faint smell of rain on a summer park. Hand on the choke, knuckles all scarred. One slow pull like prayer in the yard. Metal sighs once shudders through the frame. A cough, then quiet, then you whisper its name. Bring it home, bring it home. Let the night lean in close to the sound. Every little click is a confession. Every dull thud shaking the ground. Bring it home, bring it home, bring it home. From the weeds and the years and the wind. Turn the key so gentle, hold your breath and listen. There's a chance it might still spin. Yeah, there's a chance it might still spin.